Hello, dumplings! So, in this video, we're just going to talk about how we clean our scene up when it comes to playback. Currently, we have a lot of objects on display, which are really useful. We've got our lights, our cameras, our paths, and of course we've got our geometry as well. But when it comes to, say, play blasting this information, or watching how this scene really looks, we want to kind of clean things up a bit. So you'll notice that whenever I go to scrub or play this scene, I'll just scrub for now, you'll notice that a bunch of things vanish the second I do that. Not everything though, because we haven't finished cleaning this scene up. I would like that light and that ambient light also to disappear when I play blast, or playback, or scrub. I find that a really useful feature, because of course whenever I'm making judgments on where I want my cameras or how my scene looks, I want things to be as pure as possible, which is a really excellent way of working. So, there's a couple of things that we want to talk about first of all. There are, of course, our viewport show options, of course, sorry. Excuse my mumbling. So in the box above, we can click the show box and we can see every type of object that might exist inside our scene, and we can enable it or disable it. For instance, our good old-fashioned grid, we can enable it, but it's hidden under everything there, so that's probably a bad example. But a good example would be, we could say disable geometry, for instance, or polygons. If I disable polygons, we get, well, everything disappears. So it's not very useful. So I also can't see the scene. I want it just when I play back, I want things that I select to disappear, and that's nice and easy. So for this, I have disabled both my reference layers. I can still see the layers, I just have disabled referencing so that I can select some of the stuff in there. I might actually just disable the or just the lights layer, because all I need to select is lights in this case, and I don't want to make any mistakes there. So one thing I want to do is on Play Blast we can see that if I scrub along here, certain things disappear but these lights don't, so I want to do that next. This option's nice and easy. So select the thing that you want to work with. I'm just going to open up the attribute editor in this case, and of course using the shape tab again, which is in this case light corridor N shape, we're going to look for the object display option, and of course we can see here there's some simple options, but we can hide it on playback. So if I click that hide on playback, that will now disappear when I start to play. Now this must be done on an individual basis, so I will select the next one and click hide on playback, and I will select the next one and click hide on playback, and of course last but not least is object display hide on playback. Oh whoops, I've moved that light by accident. So this really cleans our scene up completely, and we can see it's a much purer vision. And the reason that's so useful is if we head over to panels perspective, and I'm going to use corridor number 2 again. I'm going to shrink my frame range to 100 to 200. 200, there we go. That's a bit rough, but it should do the trick. So essentially, if I scrub along here, I'm getting a much purer image, which of course, if I was to play blast from this point onwards, we're not going to see a bunch of stuff that we don't want to see. But the second I let go, of course, we see all those items return, and that's what makes it so useful, because I want those items to be there. So I'm just going to flip back to my perspective, because I keep editing those cameras by accident, which is pretty typical of me. And we can see no matter where we go in this viewport, that option's really going to work for us, which is great news. However, if we were to disable those in our show option, then it's harder to keep re-enabling and disabling things, and it can get a little bit annoying. At least working with our layer system and our disappear when playing options, or hide when play options, we've got a better way of controlling this scene whenever it's playing. And of course, as your scenes become more complex and complicated and filled with all sorts of moving objects, it can become a little bit annoying. So these types of strategies and methods become very useful to you. So keep that in mind at all times. And of course, if we were to play blast this becomes much more fun. So let's do that. Let's go to perspective, camera 2. And of course what I'm getting is simply this. I might even pull that back to its initial few frames. There we go. So here's Bob, he's going for a walk. And if I was to play blast this, okay, so we can see it calculating the play blast at the bottom, which is great news. Should automatically play. And there we go. We get a pretty good result. And we've not had to use any rendering. We can see, of course, we get a little tag down here, and of course a little viewport option there, but nothing major, nothing worth fretting about, certainly. So, an important thing to remember when you're play blasting, if I right click here and go to options, there's important things that you want to do here. So, I've got my quality set to 100 and my scale set to 1. What you don't want to do though is play blast from this type of position, because it will play blast this small square rather than this large square. So we would get a huge decrease in quality. So if I click play blast now, it will play blast it, but what we'll get is something much blurrier and a little bit rougher around the edges. I'm not sure that will show up in the actual video, but essentially it's blurrier, lesser quality, and certainly something you don't want to be using. So do remember those settings. So, anyway, getting back to it. That's all we have for this little video. We'll move on to the next one relatively soon. So just remember that you can clean your scene up when it comes to play blasting or play backing or scrubbing, but it doesn't mean you have to hide all the really cool and useful information inside of there that you want to use in order to edit and direct your videos. I'll call that an end and I'll move on to the next video swiftly. Goodbye for now.